So my name is Shameem. I am responsible for the digital upskilling program in a company called Maybank, which is a financial services firm in Malaysia. We are the largest in Malaysia and top 5 in Southeast Asia. So the story here is about how we actually created the digital transformation and the culture in Maybank. We are a group of 42,000 employees across ASEAN. And of course, we are also a 60-year-old organization. So for those of you who are in such an organization, you can probably understand the complexities. You can understand if you talk about data, how data is distributed across a variety of legacy systems, a lot of difficult processes that we have to deal with. And that comes at the tension of being a digital organization where it's about speed, agility, customer centricity, and so forth. So our journey started in 2018, and I'm quite happy to say that for the first, actually, in the first 2 years that we did our transformation, there was an immediate ROI, number one, on our investment spend on training. So we had about a 300% ROI on our training spend. And I'll explain to you how that happened shortly. And then secondly, in the first 2 years, we were able to realize about $100 million in impact. And I'll also share with you shortly how that was created. So in 2020, just to give some background, we were also recognized. So our journey started in 2018. And in 2020, we were recognized as the best digital bank in Malaysia and Indonesia. And that, I think, recognition came about because we were able to automate and digitalize and implement a lot of the solutions through our workforce who went through that transformation and upskilling program. For example, when you come into the bank, actually, when you come to Malaysia, in Maybank, you no longer have to walk into the branch to open an account. Secondly, if you're a small, medium enterprise and you wanted a line of credit, a loan, you do not actually have to come into the branch. You can apply for that digitally, get that reviewed and approved within 10 minutes, and then the loan is disbursed to you in your account within a minute. And that's replicated across our products in mortgages, in insurance, in hire purchase, lending, and personal financing, and so forth. Then came COVID. So what happened in COVID was a lot of the small, medium enterprises, many of them brick and mortar, couldn't actually do a lot of their normal day-to-day transactions physically. Of course, customers were not walking into their shops and so forth. So we created an online marketplace within 3 weeks. So in a banking industry, to come up with an application in 3 weeks is actually very unheard of. And that, I think, was driven because we had a very strong, by that time, so our mission is to humanize financial services. So it came at the back of that strong purpose to actually serve the community. And if the community is not doing well, but particularly during the pandemic, we had to do something. And that's also, I think, as a result of the strong digital culture that we had started to create with that mindset of agility and so forth. And so, how did we exactly start, and what was the journey we went through? So here's a framework which I think encapsulates the journey. There are 5 key guiding principles, and you will see that it's done in such a way, it's like a bubble that interacts among the various factors because it's not neatly step by step. But the first bubble was the first step, which was about strategic relevance. Strategic relevance here meaning to say many of our senior leaders, I'm sure this morning spoke about the business case and why, how do we prove and how do we make a case to our senior leaders that AI and ML and having a data-driven culture is important. So in that regard, what we did was we actually studied and we looked at around the world, what was happening. And in the Malaysian landscape, back in 2017, one thing happened which really opened the minds of our leaders was the fact that we had non-banks, fintech companies, overseas fintech companies called, many of you may know, Alibaba. Their fintech company is called Ant Financial. In 2017, they came into the marketplace in Malaysia, and within 6 months, they were in literally all the point of sales locations. For example, they were in the convenience stores, the 7-Elevens, the restaurants, and their payment mechanism was being used. And that was the first time we see the proliferation of QR codes, right? And people were actually using this. And they were offering really, really cheap financing. So so that was one threat that actually, I think, necessitated the investigation into what is Ant Financial and what is its business model. And so coincidentally, I met up with Karim Lakhani, who's a professor at Harvard, and he was in Malaysia, and he was presenting the case on Ant Financial. So that's actually a case study on Ant Financial. And he illustrated that in a traditional organization, a brick-and-mortar organization like a bank, when you want to serve more customers, you actually have, as the higher the number of customers you serve, you do have an increasing value. However, that value tapers off because you're constrained by the physical assets that you have, i.e. the branches. So branches actually serve a specific geographic location, but if you wanted to expand your reach to more geographic span, you actually have to have more branches, and as such, investments in land, assets, technology that goes into the branch, people, average number of staff in a branch, in our case, is like 20 people, so a lot of costs. However, if you compare Ant Financial, platform company, as it increases the number of customers that it wants to scale up, that cost is virtually zero. The marginal cost of serving an additional customer is zero, right? And so that's how you see the red line. That's a digital operating model. Marginal cost zero. You can scale up. That's on the growth side. Huge opportunities. On the cost side, now the cost to service a transaction when you come into a branch like Maybank, it's about $1, $1 US. Now, do you want to guess how much is the cost to service in a fintech company in comparison? How many times less? I'll just say less, because it's definitely not more. It is 100 times less to service a customer digitally. Okay, the cost is like 1 cent compared to $1 in a bank. So cost structure-wise, again, the fintech wins. And when you look at the cost-to-income ratio, typical bank like ours, 50% cost versus revenue. Fintech, half, 25% cost-to-income ratio. So for us, the business case was clear. Okay, and so therefore, then the other thing that our leaders were thinking, okay, so this is really, really important. Our investors are also demanding what are we doing on digitalization, because they want their returns on equity, and digitalization makes sense to bring down the cost and increase returns. And who is doing this, right? If you look at Ant Financial, the capability behind how they are actually doing this, if you look at core competencies capabilities, 75% of the staff are tech people, right? 75% of the staff are software engineers, coders, AI and machine learning algorithm developers. In the case of Maybank, it's actually the opposite. Less than 25% of our staff are actually tech people. So again, that necessitated, it was an eye-opening which necessitated a change in the capabilities that we have, that we need to have. So, and it starts with the top. Now, starts with the top. Here's a picture of our C-suites, our senior leaders and our board members. They said, if we are going to be a tech company and we are going to lead this tech company, we want to know what is this thing called an algorithm. And I applaud them, because it took guts for them to say, we don't know what this thing is called algorithm. To us, it's very abstract. But they, led by our CEO, actually, I really credit this journey to him. He said, I want to see it, and I want to know how it's developed, and create a program for us, the senior leaders, C-suites, and boards. I had to convince a business school called INSEAD Business School, because in their executive education program, most executive education programs do not have classes on Python and R. So, but I managed to convince them, and they said, okay, look, our senior leaders really want to understand this. And so they started learning about Python and R. Now, by all means, they are not, super duper coders, but the point was they actually wanted to learn. And this became the picture that we showed the rest of the entire organization on the importance of learning. If a 70-year-old board member, right, could spend 2.5 days learning to do this, all right, 70-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, then why not us? So that was very important to set the stage. Secondly, this was a very, very important mandate to create our ROI, which I mentioned about earlier. The mandate from our CEO to say that all the algorithms, all the applications need to be built in-house and not outsourced to external parties. And so therefore, when we put them through the upskilling program, the point was not just to learn, but the point was to also to apply it to create the applications that we needed. And so that actually generated the immediate ROI for us in training in HR, because within, there was a team, I mentioned about the SME financing, digital SME financing. That team actually wanted to hire an external consultant to create the algorithms and things like that. So they were said, after the program said, no, you cannot do that, you have to do it yourself. Now you can imagine the fear, immediate fear that they came up with. They say, we are not software developers, we are not coders, we are not machine learning specialists, and we have our KPIs and targets, to meet. And I think this is where the critical role of HR plays, because you really needed to create that psychological safety culture and provide the air cover for the team to actually learn. They may not be as fast, but actually our CEO provided that air cover, said, let's try, we may fail, but let's also bring and create the ecosystem to support it, which is bring the experts. So we worked with the business school, they are subject matter experts in the area of machine learning and so forth, and so they had that support. Now, the other thing is that we did have to hire. So I'm not going to say we did it all internally, we did have to hire. However, they are part of the organization, and so there was a kind of like a learning from each other kind of situation. But the business leads were permanent staff who were from the past, and so they were learning from the new hires as well. All right, then the third principle is, I spoke a lot about from the top, but to create that culture, there needs to be a bottom-up approach as well. And so that's where the inclusivity and ownership, it was important to do a bottom-up engagement. So the challenge, of course, is about buy-in, right, throughout the organization, frontliners and so forth, and how do we scale it up and how do we do so expediently. So what we did was, in Maybank, we had 9 unions, and one of them very, very influential at the national level. And so, as you can imagine, unions are very concerned about, do we have a job with all this digitalization, right? And we had to have a really open, honest, frank conversation with them to say that as an organization and institution, we really cannot guarantee a job. Yes, you do have a permanent job right now, but things can happen which is beyond our control. Financial crisis. Malaysia went through 2 financial crises, 97 Asian financial crisis, 2008, 2009, and then after that, the pandemic. So all these things are beyond our control. But however, what we will do is to invest. So we invested $10 million US dollars to train and upskill our staff so that even though we may not be able to guarantee a job, but we hope that they can be employable when they leave the bank, if they have to leave a bank. The second thing is that we mapped out, besides the unions being very influential to influence masses of staff, the other key influencer group is actually the line managers themselves. So these are supervisors who actually direct the day-to-day jobs and things like that and priorities. And so we had to convince line managers, and we gave them a role. The way to convince, we gave them a role in the process, which is they are going to facilitate learning about digital within their teams. So what we did was we trained the line managers, over 1,000 of them, to facilitate, to be a coach for learning within their teams. And their task was to facilitate 30-minute timeout sessions every week on certain key topics, which we gave them a guide for, and we had 6 different skill areas, one of them being AI and machine learning. So their task for the line managers was to facilitate learning together and asking the questions, what is AI, what's machine learning, and their staff was supposed to find the answers, Google, YouTube, whatever, and the process, and you can see these are pictures of people, learning teams coming together to learn within their respective teams, but the process enabled internalization and communication about these things. So it's not just about e-learning. E-learning does not create the internalization, but the conversations around digital AI, ML, and how it's applicable to their job was what I think created a difference. Then next, okay, that's about awareness and buy-in. The curriculum to actually now build the actual muscle of doing AI and machine learning. So we investigated a variety of curriculums out there. We decided to adopt this framework, which is from INSEAD Business School, where the first box there is about being strategy-led, business strategy. I'll give you an example. If one of the key strategies is to increase market share in a particular segment, let's say the small, medium enterprise, then what we did was to select relevant case studies to show how you can actually increase market share by increasing switching behaviors from customers to the organization. And so we selected case studies that are relevant to what the various functions were dealing with. And so when that happened, they actually saw that this is actually a very relevant to their job and relevant to what they were driving towards. So I think that's what many curriculums out there, when we send them out, let's say to Coursera and Udemy and all that, they do have good curriculum, but the relevance to the job is what needs to be created. And then the rest of the boxes are pretty much similar across curriculums, but the last 2 boxes is a bit of what the earlier speaker this morning spoke about, which is about, it's not just about creating the most technically correct algorithms. That's not the point. The point is about maximization of profits and resource allocation. And so we also, the curriculum is also focusing on making sure that they end up with a business recommendation that is executable. And we also accelerated the learning through a tool called the Maybank Excel AI tool, because when we tried to teach people in the first 2 months of the journey, about Python and R, it was just so difficult. People literally tune out learning about coding. So what we said was, okay, rather than really fight this strong current, we gave a challenge to INSEAD, hey, 90% of people use Excel, can we create an add-on? Because in Excel, there's a lot of add-ons that connects to Python and R. And literally they said, okay, yes, we can do that. And so here's an example of, let's assume that we want to predict what the MSCI index will be in 6 months' time. So if I'm a business analyst, I have my data in Excel. I can input the data is in Excel, and then the add-on for Excel actually installs Python and R in your desktop or laptop, and then it connects to Python and R, and then it outputs the data back in Excel. So here's an example. Data is in Excel, dependent variables, independent variables, and then they click a button called Analyze, and you'll see the R script there, which they can copy and paste into R if they wanted to do this with big data and so forth. And also the different algorithms from the drop-down box which they can implement. Click that button, and then it goes back into R and then spits the data back out in Excel in the front end. So there you can have your forecasting in Excel, 6 months forecasting, backtesting, and so forth. So benefits, no programming, etc. And we have all sorts of algorithms they can use. And so literally that actually, in fact, we found that this program, when people saw the value of the algorithms, it actually inspired them to learn more about Python and R. So that actually creates a really nice bridge. Now, lastly, it's about the enabling ecosystem. I listed out 6 of them. The first 2, I think, is really, really critical. I mentioned about the first one about line manager involvement and sponsorship. The second one is about creating, therefore, the digital organization model. Here's my last speech, which I'm going to really share about. So how do we architect a future-ready organization design? Now, assuming that in Maybank, we have a mission of humanizing financial services. That's our mission. So if that's the mission, what are the key results that we really have to go after? So let's say the key results here is about high trustworthiness, ethics, strong customer experience, sustainable value creation. Now, those key results have to be translated to all the jobs, key jobs. For example, when we are selecting for or designing a job for chief data scientist, the job therefore has to be accountable for high customer experience while preserving strong data ethics and human values. Now, in many of the job descriptions of data scientists out there, this is not the case. I think that many of the job descriptions does not reflect maybe the mission and the values, and therefore we may have the wrong selection. But if that is the job design, the implications are therefore the type of competencies that we look out for. And for example, if that's the job, high customer experience for data scientists, right, and data ethics and human values, therefore the competency required is one of multidisciplinary. Data science, one of it, of course, business acumen, customer relationships and experiences, and ethical mindset, right? Again, not the common job description that you would see. And if you want a humanizing mission, want to humanize that, the culture needs to be human-centered, and that sets the stage for the type of leadership in a data scientist, which has to be empowering, coaching, results focused, etc. I think, therefore, the key thing is, I think many times we select data experts, not data leaders. And when we want to scale up data science in the organization, that's going to create some problems. So, thank you very much.